Welcome to The Economy Magazine. I'm Benjamin Chong Alfares with a quick view of some of the highlights across the world economy. Today we check out a compost startup in the Jordan Valley. We look into how unemployment has pushed people back into grape harvesting in northern Italy. And we explore innovative vegetarian trends in Uganda. First, the headlines. We begin in the US, where President Barack Obama and congressional leaders failed to come to an agreement during their first meeting since the federal government shutdown. Financial markets remained unshaken by the shutdown, but business leaders feared spillover of the battle into the dispute over the debt ceiling. Failure to raise the limit on how much the federal government can borrow would risk an unprecedented default on its debt. The shutdown's effect was also felt in other parts of the world. Stocks in Asia were mostly higher as investors are left without cues from key US government data and expect the shutdown to be short-lived. In Israel, the shutdown is of particular concern as the transfer of US military aid for 2014, due on October 1st, is delayed. President Obama stood firm on his demand that Republicans agree to reopen the government and raise the debt limit, following as a comment from President Obama in an interview on CNBC.
Until we make sure that Congress allows Treasury to pay for things that Congress itself already authorized, we are not going to engage in a series of negotiations. And the reason, John, is very simple. If we get in a habit where a few folks, an extremist wing of one party, whether it's Democrat or Republican, are allowed to extort concessions based on a threat of undermining the full faith and credit of the United States, then any president who comes after me, not just me, will find themselves unable to govern effectively, and that is not something that I'm going to allow to happen.
Meanwhile, the GOP also continued to stand its ground.
The president reiterated one more time tonight that he will not negotiate. We've got divided government. Democrats control the White House and the Senate. Republicans control the House. We sent 4 different proposals over to our Democrat colleagues in the Senate. They rejected all of them.
In Europe, central bank president Mario Draghi decided to keep short-term market interest rates at a record low for a 5th consecutive month. The bank is split on whether to further loosen monetary policy as inflation falls short of the bank's 2% target. Draghi also warned that the U.S. federal shutdown, unless resolved swiftly, could threaten economic recovery as the Eurozone crawls out of recession amid high unemployment and low growth. And back to the U.S. now, which is overtaking Russia as the world's largest producer of oil and natural gas. America's resurgence as an energy giant has been fueled by the exploitation of shale rock formations of oil and natural gas. Russia struggles to maintain its energy output and has not yet embraced technologies such as hydraulic fracturing necessary for using shale rock. Whereas the trends we generally follow tend to focus on global financial markets, a large part of the global economy can still be found in the field. We'd like to take you today on a tour to different agricultural sites around the world. We go first to the Jordan Valley, where Palestinian entrepreneurs are making use of dead palm leaves to kickstart a compost company. More in the following report.
The Green Revolution isn't just for wealthy Westerners and Whole Foods customers shopping for natural cleaning products. It's global. A Palestinian company called Baladna Compost is turning dead palm leaves into organic fertilizer in the Jordan Valley near Jericho with a $1 million grant from the Japanese government. The palm tree, a symbol of the Jordan Valley, is offering sustainable opportunities to Palestinian entrepreneurs in the West Bank who are banking on the growing global interest in sustainable agriculture in recent years.
We have huge quantities of palm leaves that have dried up, plus tons of waste from the plants which contain nutritional value that can be used for organic fertilizers. This compost costs less for the farmers.
The company, which employs 15 workers so far, is the first Palestinian venture of its kind, and though it is finding success in its own backyard, it still faces competition from Israeli fertilizers.
We are the first in Palestine to make compost, which competes with the Israeli product. Our company started to produce and do marketing only 6 months ago.
Agriculture makes up about 5% of the GDP and employs around 16% of the workers in the West Bank. Because of Israeli control over the movement of people and goods in the West Bank, Palestinian farmers often only have access to fertilizers with high price tags and high chemical contents. It can be beyond challenging to be competitive with movement restrictions and delays at Israeli military checkpoints. Palestinian authorities encourage the green progress, especially considering that according to the Palestinian Ministry of Agriculture, 25 kilograms of local compost costs just over $2 compared to just under $70 for Israeli and overseas bags.
Some chemical fertilizers are allowed into the West Bank, but they have high sodium content and contain chlorine, which increases sodium in the soil of the Jordan Valley. The Ministry of Agriculture encourages organic compost, which can be sold at low prices.
Though crops are slower to harvest in organic compost, the Ministry of Agriculture is aiming to expand production in the Jordan Valley and in Nablus. They cite the fact that chemical compost tends to kill the earth, making it an unsustainable long-term choice compared to organic fertilizers.
We go now to northern Italy, where vineyards are holding a harvest of solidarity this year. Unemployment in Italy remains near an all-time high of 12.20%, vineyards aim to remedy the situation by offering work to jobless Italians. More in the following report.
Harvest time in the Oltreppo Pavese region of northern Italy is this year giving more back to the local community than just wine. It's providing much-needed work too. Rather than employing immigrant grape pickers, Farmers Union Calderetti has decided to source labour from among the local unemployed instead. Marinella has been out of work since losing her job as a secretary a few years ago.
When you have a fixed job, you never imagine that one day you're going to find yourself doing the harvest. At the moment, there aren't many job opportunities, and I'm not 20 anymore, so I'm still looking. In the meantime, I'm doing this.
While the union claims they're not discriminating against foreign workers, all of the labourers here are Italian, unemployed and under 35 years old.
In Italy, there is a real crisis. I was always a barman or a waiter. A friend told me about the possibility of doing the harvest, and I thought, why not?
CVs are collected from applicants and then sent to local farmers who are looking to hire labourers. The economic crisis has pushed up unemployment in Italy to record levels. Some 40% of young people who are not in education are without a job.
This year we only hired Italians who live in the area. In previous years we always had foreign workers, but this year we have hired only local people. It's not discrimination against foreigners. We are happy as a local business to be able to hire local people.
Hiring locally saves employers money since they don't need to cover accommodation costs. Pay for the workers is around €1,300 a month, and several dozen vineyards have now signed up to the initiative.
Unfortunately, it's a sign of the times, a sign of the crisis. We received a huge amount of CVs from people who wanted to take part in the harvest. Around 200. We have already found jobs for around 50, and that seems very positive.
Italians were once reluctant to get their hands dirty with what they deemed to be undesirable jobs. But some of the newcomers this year say they're not only happy to roll up their sleeves, but might just give it a shot in the long term.
We go now to Africa, to Uganda, where a vegetarian food revolution is underway. Despite being a land rich in agricultural resources, around 30% of Uganda's harvest is lost because of the time it takes to get the produce to market. New use of ingredients and preparation techniques helps increase shelf life and cuts waste from raw materials. The following report is more.
At Kampala's Makerere University, a food revolution is underway. From sausages made from soya to protein-rich tofu, students like Martin are churning out what they hope will be the next generation of Ugandan food. And his cutting-edge creations are already on the shelves of 10 supermarkets in town.
We go to a supermarket, set up our stand, and we give out samples. We fry the sausages, we fry the tofu, and we get people excited and energized about the product.
His research was subsidised by the government, who are keen to make the country's agriculture sector more profitable. Clever use of ingredients and preparation techniques can increase shelf life and cut waste from raw materials such as fruit, vegetables and dairy products. Currently, around 30% of Uganda's harvest is lost because of the time it takes to get to market.
Actually, during season peaks, farmers do not get enough funds. They end up selling their produce at giveaway prices. So the government decided to come up with this project to add value and to reduce the post-harvest losses of this produce.
Since its launch in 2010, the Food Lab has trained 500 technicians. Martin now needs investment to break out of the confines of the university and start producing on a much larger scale.
The good news is that we already have people knocking on our doors, and we're already in negotiations with some people who are very interested in some of our work to further commercialize it here locally in Uganda and to take it to other countries.
While these new foods are more expensive than traditional alternatives, with a range of skills like tomato processing, yogurt production and juice preservation, the next generation of food producers are hopeful that the impact of Uganda's food revolution will be a positive one for both farmers and consumers.
And we leave the world of agriculture now for some cold, hard news about innovation and high tech.
Yeah, so there's a lot of news today about that. As it happens, we did some news on agriculture, and now we're going to do some on high tech.
Okay.
And the first one comes from Wired magazine, and there's a piece in there about ebooks and the fact that they're actually more e than they are books. It's better to think of them as apps than literature, than the books that you might have taken out of the library as a kid. Why? Because what we're doing is we're actually leasing these pieces of art. We're not buying them the way you once did. In the past, you would buy a book, you could lend it out, you could resell it, you could do anything, it was yours. Right. Nowadays, what happens is you lease it. It's actually the fine print says that the code, which the book is not a book, it's a piece of code, is owned by the company that published it, or by the author, whoever's the owner of it, depending on the situation. And there's actually a famous case where Bruce Willis tried to sue iTunes, tried to sue Apple, because he found out that he couldn't pass on his music collection to his kids after he died. Because what happens is all of the things you own, all the digital pieces of art you own, revert back to the company that sold them.
Ridiculous.
It's a whole new world of thinking about the way we deal in media. And one of the pieces of fallout from this is actually that ebooks are they're trying to position themselves to cost more, and they're charging up to $70 more to show up in libraries than physical books. So it's actually what's happening is ebooks, which are essentially privately owned literature, are being taken out of the hands of people who need them in libraries. And it's becoming kind of, you have to be able to afford reading now, again, like it was in history. And it's a strange and interesting new world.
Wow, okay. Well, let's leave the world of ebooks very quickly if it's so strange.
Yes.
What else do you have there?
Another dystopic, but actually in this case utopic. CNET is reporting on Google just bought an app that is, it's what I call the Minority Report app. And that's because in Minority Report there's this famous scene where Tom Cruise is using his hands to control the computer. And they just bought an app that does this, actually.
No kidding.
And why don't we actually take a moment to look? Let me just get this set up. We have the app set up here, and we can. Let me just get the computer going, and we'll get this.
And this is Flutter. It lets me control my music like this. Flutter uses my webcam. Nothing extra needed. Give us a try and let us know what.
Let's flutter away. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So that's that, and Google just bought that, and they didn't say actually how much they bought it for. Right. And the truth is, it's got a long way to go before it gets to Minority Report status, but it looks very cool.
Okay. Promising.
Another very cool advancement is a 3D printed toothbrush that a company called Blizzident is developing. And what they're doing is they're using the same technology that's used for braces to take a mold of your mouth and create a toothbrush that's supposed to be able to brush your teeth in 6 seconds flat.
Wow.
And that's because it's printed out of this 3D printer directly to your mouth, and it costs an arm and a leg, but the first mold you take costs a lot, and it costs a little less each time.
Does it cost as much as just getting a 3D printer? Maybe we should just do that.
Yeah, it might. That might be.
I'll chip in, you know.
The truth is, I'm smitten with the idea of 3D printing. I don't know a thing about it.
All right, well, on that 3D note, let's say goodbye to our viewers. Thank you very much for watching us. Please keep on sending us your notes on the website, and see you again tomorrow.